All right. Hi, everyone. Here we are at From Insight to Impact, my series of video interviews with leaders in marketing, strategy, and research. And I'm very happy today to welcome Jinghuan Liu Tervalon, who is indeed a leader in marketing, strategy, and research. And especially after last week where we spoke to Justin, who's in the digital field. I love that Jingwan actually, on the other end of the spectrum, has a great deal of experience in CPG, food and beverage, omnichannel, retail, direct to consumer. So all those kinds of areas. I know that you worked for a while at Coca-Cola, which we've all heard of that company. Also, Dollar Shave Club, Pharmavite. So I'm very interested in your experience and what you have to say. So welcome, Jingwan. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Thanks for having me.
And it's great to see you, and looking forward to really hearing about your experience. And I'll kind of jump right in to get to the things that I'm really interested in hearing from you specifically. And I'm wondering, talking about the experience that you've had at those companies in that kind of CPG, food and beverage space. I'm wondering, the thing that's always for my colleagues and me that I always wonder about is,
Mhm.
in your experience, what would at those companies, what would make a piece of research truly valuable to you as a client?
Yeah. What would make a piece of research truly valuable to me is how actionable it is. A lot of times we do get a lot of data, and a lot of times what we do is simply present a bunch of conclusions, and it depends on your stakeholders, right? If they're very seasoned, sometimes they take it and run with it. A lot of times, more often than not, it's hard for them to decipher. So the more specific you can make the actions be, and the more you can tie it up to overall growth strategy, the more actionable it is. My previous CEO always tells me, make sure all your work can be commercialized. This is how we can prove the value of your team. And that always goes with me.
Yeah, that's uh that's great to hear that from you. And I'm wondering, is this the type of, I'm just imagining in my head that in a situation like
Hmm.
where you're in the role of leading the marketing or the strategy team. I'm wondering if you find yourself where you have to kind of translate the research findings to make it actionable, specific, commercialized for your team? Or is there some way that we researchers can maybe make that process easier for you? I realize you're on the inside, but I'm
Hmm.
wondering what can we
Hmm.
do to make sure that we're presenting actionable findings?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wish all the research partners would ask that. Obviously, in order to do that, you need to really know some of the demand spaces the companies are in and some of the growth strategy. I'll give an example, right? For a specific category, your growth strategy should be trial. I'm trying to get more people to try my products. I'm trying to grow penetration. For some other categories, it could be I'm trying to drive share wallet. I'm trying to drive repeat loyalty. So it really depends on, what we're trying to do. And the more you can tie in your research findings to the overall strategy, the better it is. And taking that strategy to specific action also takes, experience and possibly experience in the marketing space. I've always led the insights team. I'm not really a marketing leader. But I've worked with all kinds of very talented marketers. What I would like to do, and also the team, and also, working with different research suppliers and partner, is to say, okay, if we were to grow, let's say penetration, how much, right? Is it a 1 point penetration change? Is it 2 point penetration change? What does that mean? You take over 300 million American households. If one person, that would be a plus 3 million, right? So this more specific you can make it, right? I'm trying to grow, get 3 million more US households should try this product. And my efforts are going to be, I'm making it up like West Coast because we have the highest BDI and CDI, or I'm trying to go for these specific states. The more specific you can make it, the more actionable and commercialized it is. And the more likely the marketing and sales team would act on that.
Yes, yeah. As you're saying this,
Yeah.
I'm thinking that I would probably, in such a situation, I would probably at least offer to the clients to say, "Oh, how about if we run a kind of a strategy briefing meeting before we start the research to make sure that we researchers know, what you're looking for, what's actionable, what's the
Yeah.
strategy." Does that make sense, or is that something that's like, yeah, nobody has time, it's not going to happen? What do you think about those pre-meetings for making sure that we're on the same page for strategy?
Yeah, I love those pre-meetings. I absolutely love the pre-meetings.
Mhm.
And I love when the research partner actually proactively sets it up because sometimes I will forget. And then I realize, oh, I did not brief my partners enough. And at the end, if the deliverable is not up to expectation, then, we end up regretting it. So the more upfront work we can do, the more information we can share with you guys, obviously, the better. It is time consuming on the front end, but it makes the back end a lot easier.
Yeah, yeah. That makes me think of another question as far as what qualities do you look for in research partners that make you want to work with them again?
hmm It depends on the projects, right? There are projects that's more about bringing the team together, getting everyone aligned on one page. Let's say we're going to do a workshop. At the end of the workshop, I want everyone to align on a consumer target that we're going to stick to for the next 5 years, right? For this type of project, if I were to hire a facilitator, the quality that I would look for is, is this person good with driving consensus? Is this person good with data visualization, taking all that data without overwhelming everyone in the room, and then driving a consensus at the end? So that's the skill I'm looking for. There will be, you know, uh, possibly a project like a qualitative immersion study, right? Where you have your most senior people, your C-suite people, a bunch of VPs attending. You really have to make sure the recruitment is flawless. Then you need someone who's super on top of, recruitment, really knows in and out, ins and outs of screening people, and also with great domain knowledge, right? So they're passionate about the brand. They know your category very well. For a project, let's say it's some sort of neuroscience based framework, then I want someone with deep expertise in the area, but also someone who's done activation before with something a little bit more intellectual, like a semiotic study or neuroscience-based project. It's very easy for those studies to be 30,000 feet high and they're left on the shelf and everyone reads the reports, think, oh my God, this is so smart. And then no one bothers to read it again, right? Those would be the scenario where you need to make sure you have someone possibly with a client side background who understand, oh, in addition to delivering these slides, I need to talk about, codes and all that stuff. I actually also need to say, oh, this is what it means for your brand positioning. You're going to go from talking about X to talking about Y, do this kind of transition. The from to chart is, a lot of people love those charts and they're very, very useful. So it really depends on the kind of project that we have on hand.
Yes. Yeah, that's very helpful. Those examples are very interesting because I can see that there are situations where you need those different specific skills or background. Um, I, Changing gears slightly, though, I'm wondering about And you actually touched on this idea of that you don't want it to get put on a shelf. You want people to get it and utilize it. So I'm wondering if you could give researchers some advice
Yeah,
about designing projects that actually get used inside client organizations. What advice would you have?
I would say really book time with the client to really get to know as much as possible about how did this project get started, who initiated it, who are the critical people, stakeholders that we need buy-ins from. A lot of times, well, not a lot of times, but insights is a support function to marketing, to sales, right? So you want to understand who's going to be on the receiving end of this research and what are his or her pain points. What are some of the challenges that we need to solve? What is the most critical business need that we need to address? The more information you can get on those things, the more likely, your RFP will get your proposal will get responded to, and then the smoother the research process would be.
So that makes me think, and this might be obvious to you, but not to me. I'm wondering because you mentioned about leading insights teams within the organization, and I want to make sure that I
Mm-hmm.
have a good understanding
Mm-hmm.
of like what's expected from your internal insight team versus the a provider who's a
Yeah.
research vendor. Um, yeah, or there are things where because and obviously I think what we'd like to do is make sure we're doing whatever we can to make the life of the insights team easier. But you might say there are some things, no, you don't do this, my team
Yes.
does this. I'm just wondering about that.
Right. Right. So the insights team, different companies obviously have different structures, and a lot of times it is business intelligence or marketplace intelligence or analytics team with insights team. So, right, you have, you know, your people managing and mining your point of sales data, all your household panel data, and their day-to-day job is to say, I'm reporting on my brand share on different categories, how my brand is doing. Is it up and down, right? Share is for a lot of for a sector like CPG, most companies are fairly mature, the categories are mature. You are looking at share gain versus share loss, right? A lot of the categories are flat. 2% growth is good. So you're tracking that share, and then if there's any share loss, you're trying to diagnose, is it driven by distribution, is it driven by velocity? So there's usually a few people working on that, and then driving a lot of conversation with our sales lead, doing joint business planning. So that's that team. Insights, on the other hand, could also be all kinds of different types, right? In my previous roles, we usually have someone handling all the brand communications, right? Anything that the brand says and does in front of a consumer, how your persona comes to life, how you activate on your segmentation, how you put out your 15-second spot, manage your social, right? That's all on the brand side. And then you can have like a category insights or innovation insights that is about identifying future demand space and understanding what are some of the white spaces that we can own, and how do we have a long-term innovation pipeline that fills that demand space and that white space. So the setup is a little different. And in bigger companies, you have a hub and spoke approach, right? You have a center of excellence where they do annual or biannual deliverables like a media tracker or whatever it is, ROI tracker, and then they will cascade it to different regions. That's a established model. Um, or you can have different models. At Coke, we used to have someone who does a lot of macroeconomic forecast, with someone who does a lot of behavioral science insights. So the insights person for specific brands and categories and business units would work with this deep expert on bringing those disciplines to life. So it depends on how the team is structured. In terms of what research suppliers versus what clients do in-house, I think one key difference obviously is we have a full view of everything that goes on, all the different research that goes on, all the data resources. Our biggest job is really to bring all the data together and to piece together a cohesive story for the brand and for our marketing and sales team. With research partners, yes, a lot of them we have long-term history with, they know our brands well, but they still see a fairly limited component of the brand. I love when, research partners bring me very strategic recommendations, and I always welcome that. But as much as, we all try to bring that to the table, sometimes you're not seeing all the whole picture, and that is our job to have that whole picture. And the other thing is we're really there to make sure something like an innovation insights, right? It's end-to-end support from the very early ideation stage to product launch to post-launch analysis, tracking, all that. And that's a very long journey. 70% of the new innovation products don't even make it. They fail. It's critical for the internal team to really stay on top of the whole product launch cycle. And that's something that we uniquely own internally.
Yes, yeah, it's as you're talking about this, it occurs to me that, and thinking about the qualitative research, with my field,
Mm-hmm.
I can see that for many of the internal team, the qualitative research, a specific project, that's not typical for their day-to-day experience. As you said, they're working on keeping on top of data and stuff like that. So I can see that it may be important for us to make sure that we're easing all the administrative stuff for the internal team, because this is not necessarily
Oh,
their everyday
absolutely.
thing. But and then it
Yeah,
sounds like, and tell me if I'm wrong, then it sounds like since we know we're not going to have that full view that the internal team has, what we do need to do is make sure we can get as immersed as possible to make sure we're knowledgeable enough to provide those
exactly.
strategic recommendations. Does that sound about right?
Yes, yes,
Hmm.
yes, 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 yes. And
Hmm.
also just influencing in general, right? Um, I've, I've been with different organizations, and not every marketer, every salesperson buys into qualitative research. A lot of them are fairly resistant to it because it's qualitative research. And there's always voice saying, oh, that's not a representative consumer of ours, or oh, that's just one person. On the flip side, people love to also quote what people have said in focus groups and in home interviews, right? So and so said that, and the other person said that. It really brings that to life. And that's something that we never get from numbers. You can read numbers, but you don't have richness and robustness of, all the different colors and texture of people's lives, how they use your products, what kind of food and cravings they have, what kind of beverage they want. We don't have that. So I'm a huge, huge believer of qualitative research. And if the partner can do some of that influencing work with me, that's a huge like burden shared. Yeah.
So if I'm
If that
understanding you
person can
correctly,
persuade my internal stakeholders, mhm,
mhm, and that might be in one of
that
those
why
internal
qualitative
meetings.
is necessary.
Got it. Yeah, yeah. Where
Yes.
we might
Yeah.
be making those points, for example, about bringing it to life and you know, to make sure that your internal stakeholders get the potential value of this.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Yeah. You
Exactly.
know,
Exactly. Exactly.
because that brings me to another thing I was going to ask you about the internal dynamics within a large company like the ones that you've worked for. Anything that you feel like research suppliers, like my colleagues and me, should better understand about how things work internally, how insights get shared and acted on inside big organizations, or anything about that internal aspect that we should know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the bigger the organization is, the harder it is to bring everyone on board. So we always try to do it early. We also try to be very respectful of people's time. So I can't book them for all the different check-in points. I can only book them for a kickoff and then send them to the field. It is a delicate balance, and some people are more into it. They want to see all the discussion guide and screener. Some people are like, oh, just tell me what to do. So
Hmm.
we have the challenge of managing all the different dynamics for sure. But I think, back to just talking about leadership skills, is identifying how people prefer to be communicated to, and then tailor your message to how they like to receive it for effectiveness. A lot of times it is about how you deliver your message, and it depends on the organization culture too, right? A lot of times when you work for a fairly established brand and people are very used to a certain norm, you say brand health tracking, everyone kind of understand what it is, that would be a lot easier. But then sometimes if you work for a smaller brand where, or a challenger brand or insurgent brand where you're trying to unseat the number one in share, right? You're trying to chip away in share, where the culture could be very much about challenging, right? Then you need to think about how to anticipate some of the challenges. How do you properly bring people along the journey so you don't get challenges on the back end? You resolve all the different points up front so that your research is very smooth. So it depends on kind of the organization culture, I would say.
This is interesting because one thing that I realize that I've heard in different ways in several of these interviews that I've conducted is this importance to do the work in advance, to get people on board in advance because afterward it's going to be a problem. Um, and that's just,
Yeah,
and it sounds
yes,
like different ways for different organizations. Like you need to know that kind of how best to influence the
yes,
stakeholders.
yes,
Um,
yes. I think we're not just in a data business, we're founded. I think we're not just in a data business, we're fundamentally in a people business. When we have
yeah.
AI and you can generate so much data, it is the people that you need to bring on board to have, when it comes to activation, you're counting on your salespeople, your marketing people. We're not in charge of any marketing activation. We're here to provide data and insights and recommendation. So fundamentally, we're in the business of influencing other people. So the soft skills are really, really critical.
And then it sounds like it would not be inappropriate for someone like me when talking to the insights person at a large company to actually ask, tell me about some of the internal, I don't know if I should use the word internal politics, but tell me about the stakeholders and what they want and what are things that I should be aware of, or even what are areas where I should be careful about or treading lightly.
Yep,
It sounds like that could be a fair question to like, okay, tell me about the political landscape so I can be most helpful, really.
exactly. Yep.
Hmm.
Yeah. You kind of insert yourself in a dynamic, right? It's always a group, and the in this team lead is usually in charge of just managing the group dynamics, right? These are the people I need to influence. These are the people that I need to inform. You have your RACI chart, right? Some people are responsible for making decisions. Some people are more inform and consult, right? The more you can understand who's doing what part of the RACI chart, the better, um, the more effective you will be.
Yes, very helpful. You know, on along those lines, I'm wondering, what are things that you wish that more of the qualitative research suppliers understood about working with client-side insights executives?
Yeah, we talked a lot about just getting buy-in early, understanding the team dynamics. I think the other thing I haven't talked about is really fundamental marketing skills. I've encountered qual practitioners. They're great moderators, great at writing reports, but not super solid marketing fundamentals. And in order to be effective and in order to connect to certain marketing strategies, that's a skill that I would love to see, right? How can you tie it into, driving share of wallet? How can you tie it into this is how you're going to get your brand breakthrough in a very crowded media landscape? The more you can speak a marketer's language, the better.
That's very helpful. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm making notes as you're speaking. The way you can speak the marketer's language, the better. That's, I think, words to live by. I realize we're kind of almost out of time over here. I'm wondering, just as a kind of as a wrap-up question, if as you're looking ahead, is there anything, any changes that you see as far as what clients, insights executives, what they'll need from us research suppliers in the next few years?
Yeah, I think a general trend I've seen, especially on the quant side, is just synthetic data. There's a lot of chatter on AI, and we've experimented with it. I'm open, but I'm also very skeptical about synthetic data. It's good for certain purposes, but sometimes it comes out as flat. So
Hmm.
if we really need to, let's say, pull the personas apart and show the difference in attitudes and behavior, that might not be the best tool. But I would love to see how just in qualitative research in general, how as an industry we're experimenting with AI to maybe, manage project flow, um, make things run more smoothly. And that's always top of my mind. And also how like
Yes.
we build next generation of talent. Because qualitative research needs to exist. It's really, really beneficial to organizations making decisions with heart. And I would love to see the industry thrive.
Yes. Thank you very much. Those are inspiring words to end on. It's been a pleasure talking to you today, Jinghuan. I really appreciate it. Thanks again.
Thank you, Jay, for having me.